Okay, of course, we need to dive deeper into the NHL trade deadline aftermath. It's still only a few days removed, so it's not too late to give some advice about changing fantasy values. So let's go through a few of the names that were moved and discuss whether their value changed for the better or worse.
All right, let's start with Anthony Duclair to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yes, Anthony Duclair, I think the value is up. The role is going to shrink. So playing 16-10 a night as a San Jose Shark, 13.56 as a Tampa Bay Lightning member, but he's playing now with Steven Stamkos, Anthony Cirelli, playing on the second power play unit. So overall, in this case, just the quality of line mates goes up so much that that's worth the slight drop in ice time. So I like Anthony Duclair as a deep league pickup.
All right, what about Jack Roslovic?
Yeah, this is a funny one. So Jack Roslovic, 13 points in 12 games going into that trade to the New York Rangers. So he'd found some life in Columbus. A perennial underachiever, a first-round pick, really fast, was great in the USN TDP. I think he played with Austin Matthews and Matthew Tkachuk, I think was the line back in the day, right? So he always had great potential. Didn't find it in Winnipeg or Columbus. And with the Rangers, like I didn't like this trade in real life. It's a square peg in a round hole. He's a center. Now you're making him your first line right winger with Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad. I think it was a bad trade by Chris Drury, but either way, it's still very relevant fantasy-wise. So Jack Roslovic is now playing a first line with the Rangers with Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad. I don't know how long that's going to last because I don't think it's a good fit. So I wouldn't have a long leash here, but just based on that role, he's a priority pickup. You got to add him. He's got a pretty sweet deployment now.
See, in Columbus, he would sometimes he'd play top line a lot of times, and then he'd play some good line mates. But then just knowing what Columbus was doing this year, they would also then just throw some random career AHLer on that line and give him nothing to pass to, and it would make no sense. So yeah, different position here, but a good team for him to be surrounded by with a lot of good scoring opportunities. What about Vladimir Tarasenko to the Panthers?
Yeah, this one is probably the most straightforward. He's pretty much shot out of a cannon since that trade, playing with Alexander Barkov and Sam Reinhart. 2 goals, 3 points in his first 2 games. And it's similar to Duclair in Tampa Bay. I think Tarasenko is going to play a little bit less, but just the deployment is so much better. He's being used in such a great role that I think he's going to be a difference maker down the stretch now.
Okay, I like it. What about Casey Middlestad? I know a lot of people are talking about, oh, will he actually get traded? And I didn't believe it, but he was.
Yeah, this is a fun one. So we know now he's locked in as the number 2 center in Colorado. If you're trading Bowen Byram, it's not like you're going to throw Casey Middlestad in the bottom 6, and you got rid of Ryan Johansson as well. So Casey Middlestad is uncontested now as the number 2 center in Colorado. The line mate quality is going to be very interesting. At worst, right now, he's got Jonathan Drouin and Valeri Nichushkin. At some point, Artturi Lehkonen could get swapped in there. You could have Jared Bednar could split up Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen, which he does from time to time. You could suddenly have Middlestat playing with Rantanen. So the permutations are exciting. And to me, that really elevates Casey Middlestat's floor. It will be interesting to see, just psychologically, if Middlestat is ready for this. He's never really played on a team with high expectations before. This team wants to win a Stanley Cup. So we'll see how he handles that newfound pressure. But either way, I think he certainly gains in fantasy value because he just has a really great situation now in terms of where he's going to be in the lineup.
And going the other way, Bowen Byram.
Yeah, so this is a fun one where I think both sides of the trade significantly gain fantasy value. So Bowen Byram, you can make a case as the biggest overall gainer in fantasy value of any player at the trade deadline. So he was playing 19.51 a night with Colorado. He's playing 25 minutes, more than 25 minutes a night in his first couple of games with Buffalo. Immediately thrown onto the top pair with Rasmus Dahlin, playing third pair in Colorado. So they've just thrown Bowen Byram into the fire. Now he's playing on the top power play unit. He's already got 2 points in his first 2 games, 7 shots, 4 hits. This is a player who his career has obviously moved in fits and starts because of his health problems, but he still is only 22 years old, averages 15 goals per 82 games in his career. So has still a lot of untapped fantasy potential as a defenseman. And as I did a story about last week, he's also arriving with some really close friends. He and Dylan Cousins are like besties. Peyton Krebs as well, really close with Bowen Byram from childhood. Even Jack Quinn, once he's back, they all played on the major World Junior team together. So from a psychological standpoint for Bowen Byram, the new environment could be more comfortable than people realize. Like he's so close to Dylan Cousins, they went on vacation together during the All-Star break. So I think that will also help just mentally Byram could get comfortable quickly, find his confidence quickly. And I just think the arrow is pointing very up for him now.
Yeah, and less pressure for him right now too, because no one's expecting the Buffalo Sabres to be, a playoff contender. But
Mhm.
Colorado, you expect that team to challenge for the Stanley Cup. So I think with Byram, I'm a huge fan of him. I think that a bit of an off year for him compared to what we've seen, but I'm not worried. I still think this is a guy with so much potential. He's still young. A trade where 1-for-1, it works for both sides. Now this one is interesting. Michael Bunting to Pittsburgh. He gets to have the same GM he had last year. So yeah, a guy that we know liked him. But yeah, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, Michael Bunting, of course. Kyle Dubas had to get his boy back. And yeah, you think of Michael Bunting as a bit of an afterthought in that trade because for Pittsburgh, it was more about getting the prospects, of course. And obviously, Jake Gensel's fate is what everyone will pay attention to in Carolina. But Bunting, sort of a throwaway part of the trade, uh, Pittsburgh needs bodies. And what do? They immediately install Bunting on the top line. So you're going to see him play with Sidney Crosby. He was averaging 1507 of ice time in Carolina, 1913 so far with Pittsburgh. So he's going to play a lot more, and we've seen him produce well playing alongside top-end players before, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and so on. So I think he could actually be sneaky valuable down the stretch in fantasy. You could see a little surge. Right now, Pittsburgh, you could tell they're just completely beaten, and they're just getting their butts kicked because they're broken. But I still think we're going to see a little bit of a surge. They're going to start winning some games. They're not this bad. So Michael Bunting, I think, is going to get his points playing with Crosby.
He has something to prove here too, I think.
He does. Yeah. After signing that deal, signs a 3-year deal in the offseason and gets traded in year one of that contract. Ouch.
Yeah, so no kidding. This one is an interesting one. Adam Henrique to the Edmonton Oilers.
Yes. So all the names I've discussed so far are gainers. Adam Henrique is a definite faller. And I warned about this last week on the show, and the value is completely decimated. He went from line one, power play one. Now he's playing the third line, not even on the power play at all with Edmonton, playing 17:35 a night. Now he's playing 14:20. He got a look very briefly with Vander Kane, Leon Draisaitl in that first game, but I don't think that even lasted for an entire game. And it's cooked. He's already in the bottom six. It's over for Adam Henrique. I dropped him in my own league. It's done. And we saw this coming. If Adam Henrique is on a contender, he's just not playing in the top six. So this was always going to happen, and just give him a nice salute. He gave you a nice little run. You can drop him. And if he gets eventually a shot again, they put him on the top line, whatever, they need a spark, then yeah, go grab him. But you can't sit there waiting for that to happen.
Yeah, I like that one. Now this guy wasn't traded. So Ross Colton.
Yes, so this one goes back to the example I used for my tip of the week about the indirect effects of a trade. So Ross Colton is someone who loses a lot of fantasy value. The Casey Middlestat trade. So he had a moment this season where he was getting some exciting deployment. He was on the top power play unit. He was getting some looks as the number 2 center because Johansson wasn't working out. Nichushkin and Arturi Lehkonen were out. So Colorado was really juggling their forward group a lot. But now the wingers are healthier. And Middlestat's coming in. He's clearly locked in as the number 2 center. So Colton is now pretty much locked out of the top 6. I don't think he's going to be up there for the rest of the year. So similar to Adam Henrique, you can give him a salute, but his overall value, I think, is not going to be great the rest of the season. He'll still help you in banger formats, but his little moment is over in terms of just that temporary surge to his value.